What is your vision for Reading 10 years from now?
For the city?
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a haven for families. I think it's affordable. I think if you live down south in the Bay Area, LA, the idea you can come here and buy a home, actually be a homeowner,
right?
And you can put your kids in kind of whatever school you think fits best for your family's needs. And then you can go paddleboarding in the summer, snowboarding in the winter. You can ride bikes on those fantastic trails. You can do local eateries. You can do franchise eateries. I mean, it's if I was raising a family again, this is the spot.
Welcome to the City Builders Podcast, brought to you by the Reading Chamber of Commerce. I'm Todd Jones, President and CEO. In each episode, we bring you insights from local business leaders, tackle important issues, and explore what's shaping the future of Reading. Whether you're a business owner or just interested in our community's growth, this podcast is something for you. Thanks for joining us. This is City Builders. The City Builders Podcast is brought to you by Obsidian IT. Obsidian IT is a Reading-based, employee-owned technology company providing simple, scalable, outsourced IT for your business. Discover how Obsidian cares about IT and give them a call at 530-242-6000 or obsidianit.com. Obsidian keeps us running at the Chamber, and we could not do business without them. I'm here today with Nick Zettel, the Director of Reading Electric Utility, and we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff, anywhere from why power is so expensive in California to solar power, batteries, a little bit of nuclear, and what Reading Electric Utility looks like 50 years from now. So join us and listen in for this podcast.
Thank you for having me. For all the listeners, this is an honor, and I really, I appreciate this opportunity to just sit here and have a dialogue. And
I think I'm a little bit of a power nerd. I just love talking about power, and I'm a big fan of Reading Electric Utility, so I'm excited to have you on today.
Well, yeah, and you are a power nerd, and
you
know a lot more about it than I think you probably should, and I love it. You know what I mean? So I think this is going to be great. I think we're going to be
awesome.
We're going to cover a lot of territory.
So tell me, what's your favorite thing to do? You have no responsibilities. It's a Saturday. You don't have to mow your lawn. Your kids aren't home. Your wife's out of town. You can do anything you want. You have a free day. What do you do? What do you do here? You've been in the North State a long time.
So if I had a free day, and this has actually happened, I've done this before. So I actually have a couple acres of property that I live on, and I have all these projects in my head that I'm always going to do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to work on this thing over here. I would probably start doing some of those.
Oh, nice.
And it's
so be productive.
To me, it's not work. It's just time to be in my head and focus on the task at hand right in front of me.
Yeah.
Very simple, right? Split the firewood or go cut some brush or work on building the shop thing. It's very, to me, that's very peaceful.
Cathartic a little bit.
And then when I get tired, we'll go in and relax and put on a movie or something. It's pretty, I'm easy.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not complicated. I don't need to go on some.
So you don't need a big nightlife. Like people say, hey, we need all this stuff in Reading to make Reading amazing. You just want to chill.
I think Reading is amazing.
It is amazing.
I really do. I think if you want nightlife, come downtown. There's something always going on. There's always events going on.
There's always an event. There's always 5 events every single night.
Always events going on. Or if you want to take it easy at home, do that. Reading's an easy place to chill.
Yeah.
Right. It's usually pretty quiet. Everything's low key. A lot of family things going on. It's great here. It really is.
That's good. So one of our Visit Reading avatars is actually the Chill Seeker. Yeah. We have like the Thrill Seeker and the Chill Seeker. Yeah. So Reading's a good place to chill.
Yeah.
Reading's a good place to chill. I like that.
For sure. And like any season, really.
Yeah.
In the summer, if you want to chill, if you want to go like really basic, just go up to Whiskey Town, throw a blanket on the beach and sit there and enjoy it.
Yeah. Get one of those REU blankets.
Yeah. Get an REU beach blanket. If you want to get really technical and complicated, go rent a boat or something.
Yeah.
Right? And then in the winter, go up to the ski park or somewhere. There's always something to do here.
Yeah.
And if and I don't really like it when people tell me there's nothing to do here. Right. I'm just no way.
Yeah.
I'm not buying it.
Yeah. That's good.
know? Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Reading is a great place to live. In Reading Electric Utility, you're one of the biggest, maybe I shouldn't say the biggest, but you're a pretty big department within the city of Reading.
Right.
So how is it getting, I didn't set you up for this, but how is it getting employees? Are you able to find employees that you need? Are they liking the area? What are some of the challenges you have when getting employees to Reading?
So I think this is for any employer that has a technical discipline, whether it's medical or engineering or something where you're looking for specialized folks that are trained with experience. and you're looking to have them move here, which is, I would say we're, compared to the metro areas, we're rural.
Yeah,
we really
sure,
are.
we
Right?
are.
I mean, we're rural.
I think we're technically suburban is what they call us. Suburban,
right?
Yeah.
But to a lot of folks that are moving up from, say, the Bay Area or LA area, or coming from out of state, some big city, this is somewhat rural to them, right? So what we've actually, I was just talking at a coffee this morning with the personnel director, Carrie Kibler. She's fantastic. And I'm very excited to brag that we have, for the first time in my knowledge, dropped our vacancy rate under 10%.
Wow. For REU specifically?
For REU specifically.
That's
right?
amazing.
So we have 205 positions, and at any given time we have folks retiring.
Sure.
Some folks are getting other
Yeah.
jobs. You have people out on illnesses, whatever. And it's what we've been doing is looking specifically for people that want to be here in Reading.
Yeah.
Do we want you to know the power business? Do we want you to be that electric engineer or that energy trader or a portfolio manager? Sure, we want all that, but we really want you to be here.
Sure.
We can teach you the power business, right? We can't teach you to want to be here and stay here. So that's what we've been really focusing on, holding our own virtual career fair. So instead of us going to somebody else's career fair with colleges, we've been holding our own. And it's been
awesome.
great. So we actually hired a few electric engineer students right out of college by doing that.
Oh, nice.
And to be totally open, we've had a couple new hire grads from engineering school. They come here, they work about a year, and then they move back down south. Their family's down there, or there's some other their reason. But we've also had a lot of folks stay.
That's great.
And so we're really growing from within with training programs and creating positions that allow for the growth. You don't just come in as a senior level person.
Yeah, right.
Right. So we have to break that down and build the growth. And that's we've been very successful with that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, one of my favorite things about the chamber, I try to stay on top of what's happening at the city of Reading. I like to go to council meetings. I'm there in person every few months. I watch it online live almost every time they have a council meeting because I'm that much of a nerd and I love to know what's going on in the city of Reading. And actually, one of my favorite things is when REU gets up there and presents. Between you, Greg Robinette has a lot of detail with finance, but when REU gets up there, whether it's you or Joe Bowers talking about what's happening, I think REU is, coming from where I was at the EDC to where I'm at the chamber, REU is the greatest asset that we have, I believe, in the city of Reading. Obviously, quality of life is amazing, but for a business looking to relocate here, REU is one of our best assets. To be able to keep the power as cheap as you guys can in California is amazing. And I just think that, you guys probably you don't get enough credit. REU was the best decision I think the city of Reading has ever made to have our own utility within the city of Reading.
Well, and I will, for one, I really appreciate that. And because I'm the director right now, I'll take all that credit right now. And, but we've been in business since 1921, right? And actually, I want to talk a little bit about where we see our value proposition for both the business sector and then the residential sector. But before we get all that, I got my hands on a master's thesis paper written by an individual who was going to Chico State in the 1960s, right? This is typewriter.
Yeah.
And in the master's thesis, it was talking about what happened from 1914 to 1921 in the city of Reading that led to the formation of Reading Electric Utility.
Yeah.
Or back then it was the electric department.
And was PG&E the provider back then?
It was Northern California Power and Light, which was PG&E's predecessor, and then eventually it was PG&E. But yeah, essentially, the city of Reading was the first city in California to exercise eminent domain rights to take the assets from Northern California Power and Light, from that utility, because it quickly, essentially, they didn't want to sell.
Right.
But the city
there was a lawsuit and everything.
There was a lawsuit.
Yeah.
It was drug out. It was with the Railroad Commission.
Oh my gosh.
It was the Railroad Commission, and now it's the California Public Utilities Commission. But back then it was just the Railroad Commission. But they oversaw utilities, and it got to the point where the city was just so frustrated with it and the service and the cost that they exercised their rights of eminent domain and took the assets. Right. So, and from there on out, I think just great decision making from council, always looking ahead. Right. Don't. Right now is right now, and we're in that operating environment, being reliable in everything we're doing. But who's looking out 20, 30, 40, 50 years?
Right.
We need to be making decisions on the ultra long term and be strategic.
Right.
So we really work hard to be staring at two things all the time. I actually break our meetings down like this. We break our meetings down into strategic discussions and tactical discussions, right? And because the tactical will take over every time, the crisis of the moment.
Sure.
We have to force room on the strategic platform. And I think by doing that, it ensures that somebody in REU is thinking 20, 30, 40 years, way past your career.
Sure.
And that's one of the things I really love about the team I work with is it's not about us.
Yeah.
We have our moment in time with this 100-plus-year-old utility. This is our moment, and what we need to do is be stewards and ensure the next crew takes on a great thing.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And if you work that mindset, a little bit of credit, right? Last year, compared to PG&E, we saved our residential customers $85 million.
That's amazing.
In 1 year.
Yeah.
So just, purely from, say, asset valuation, I don't really have the final numbers, but I was talking to the team. If we added the commercial sector, we're probably 150 million total savings in 1 year.
Yeah.
Right. And that's just money that stays here in town.
Right.
Stays in people's pockets. They can go out to dinner. They can go shopping. And for businesses, you can hire more employees. You can cover the cost of insurance increases.
Yeah.
Because it's going up everywhere. That if you leave $150 million a year in Reading, that it goes somewhere, it turns into something.
Right.
And I think to your point of we don't get enough credit, I think this utility's been doing so well for so long, we're just baked into the economic cake.
Sure,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting too, and I don't want to throw PG&E under the bus because they're members as well,
Right.
and they serve a really valuable thing because it is very expensive to serve power to rural areas without a lot of density. It's super expensive. So
let's be totally fair. We don't serve customers way up in the mountains.
It's hard.
The snow.
Yeah.
Where you've got one customer at the end of a 5-mile line.
Right.
So you have all that expense for that customer, right? So I think people really need to factor that in when you compare, rates, electric rates.
Right.
But also there is a difference in the investor-owned model that
Yeah.
PG&E runs and the public power model that REU is.
Yeah. Because I talk to businesses all the time, and when rates go up, you have rate increases planned for the next 3 or 4 years, and it affects commercial as well. And my father-in-law is a manufacturer; he's had a manufacturing company for many years. He has multiple buildings now, and I talk to the tenants all the time, and I talk to business owners about, man, my rates are so expensive, and I remind them often, if you were in PG&E doing the same thing, looking at what your demand factor is, looking at how many kilowatt hours you use per month, you're probably saving anywhere. I know at my father-in-law's building, our tenants probably save $10,000 to $15,000 per month, not being on PG&E.
Right. But it's relative, right?
It is relative, of course.
Because it's
and again, I don't want to throw them under the bus, but it's a different model.
It's an economic driver for the city. Absolutely. The structure of the utility, the rate structure, the stability of it, and then the reliability. Right. And so it's one thing to be less costly, but you better be really reliable, right? And I think that if you lived in Reading a long time, you operate a business in Reading a long time, you just get used to a low cost of energy, right? And so when we have to raise our rates because our costs are going up, right? Because we're nonprofit, we don't raise rates to make a profit,
right?
We raise rates because our costs are going up, right? So the little green transformer box that sits in the front yard before COVID, it was say $5,500.
BC before COVID.
BC,
yeah.
Now it's $25,000 or $20,000.
Oh my gosh,
same box.
That's insane,
right? And there's a million reasons why.
Yeah.
Supply chain, materials, whatever you want to call it. And you take that to a trouble truck. The bucket truck we see driving around with our troubleshooters in it that we all love when there's an outage and they show up within 5-10 minutes and they got the lights on. You look out and go, okay, good, they're here. One of those trucks used to be $130,000. Now they're $290,000.
Wow.
And they take 2 years to get.
Yeah.
And you better order one because starting in 2027 has to be zero emission or all electric, and they don't really make those yet.
Yeah. So that's true for medium and heavy duty trucks as well?
No, that is.
Oh my gosh.
No, medium and heavy duty trucks are zero emission starting in 2027.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years, basically.
You can apply for an exemption.
Yeah.
But you have to apply
so
for
when
it.
the power's out and you can't charge your truck, and the REU truck needs to come fix the power, but they can't charge because there's no power.
But nobody panic.
Okay.
Nobody panic. My team is 100% Johnny on the spot with this, managing the fleet. We knew this was coming. The fleet will be ready. We've got our trucks are very new.
Can you keep the ones you have? You just can't buy new.
You can buy new, but it has to be zero emission.
But if you have a diesel truck now, keep it running for the next 50 years?
Right.
Okay.
Or keep it running as long as your fleet plan allows.
Right.
But our fleet's very new. We've also ordered a lot of new trucks, anticipating that there's going to be a gap here of getting this equipment. And what's not going to happen is we're not going to just throw our hands in the air and say, well, we can't, there's nothing we can do. That's not an option. Right?
And I think that's one of the things I appreciate most about REU and really the city of Reading in general is that we have a lot of challenges here. And one of the things I say often is don't be a victim to your circumstances.
Right.
So like the state regulatory environment's really tough. There's a lot of challenges coming at Reading Electric Utility specifically. And I think you guys do a really good job of just like, it is what it is. Like you got to figure it out. I know you guys work with different groups to help advocate for different changes, but at the end of the day, we have to kind of deal with whatever the reality is. Right. And I think you guys do a really good job of just facing reality.
Yeah, I mean, and we really bifurcate it into advocacy and reality.
Yeah.
Right. And so, and on the reality front, what we really see ourselves as, fast actors, fast reactors. We don't need to be on the tip of the spear. We don't need to set the policy tone for the state. We don't need to drag our feet. We have a fantastic city council that supports this utility beyond all measure. We can quick decision making when we need to make it. So it's a great space to be in where you can advocate, and we have all the, the associations we're involved with in Sacramento and at the federal level. But when it comes down to it, Reading isn't moving the needle for the state of California.
Yeah.
There's 40 million people here.
There's a lot.
There's 90,000 here.
Yeah.
Right. And so, in fact, I think there's probably only about 1 million people north of Woodland. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's 39 million south of it. So, we know who's wagging who here. But the way my team sees it is, okay, what do we need to be doing to ensure that our customers have the same 99.997 reliability and keep our costs as low as we can in the world that we're in. Yeah. In the reality checked world that we're in. Yeah. And they're doing great. But it's not perfect. We will have to raise rates. Costs are going, and it's across the nation it is. Yeah. It's the cost of utilities in the past 4 years, electric utilities across the nation has skyrocketed. Even if some utilities in the Midwest that aren't chasing a zero emission portfolio or EV fleets, their costs have gone up for power plants, for labor, all the things. Yeah. And so why in California, and again, coming from economic development, I'm seeing neighboring states, how much power costs. Like if you go to Oregon, if you go east of Bend, I can't think of the name of the town off the top of my head right now, but I think it's Prineville. Prineville, there's a bunch of data centers there because Facebook and Meta and all these people are getting power for dirt cheap. It's very, very inexpensive. I know, there is a lot of reasons why power is so expensive in California, but I mean, you couldn't, you're a nonprofit, you can't get rates really any lower. They're not going to get lower. Why is power so expensive in California? And I know there's a lot of reasons. So let's kind of break down let's take the retail rate of just about 15 cents per kilowatt hour. That's the unit of measure. Yeah. So if you go on the back of the house. That's how much I'm paying at my house per month. So if you go look at the meter on the house, and it'll register in kilowatts per hour, which is 1,000 watts per hour. So the simplest way I can say is turn on a 1,000-watt light bulb for an hour, and it's going to cost you about 15 cents. Right. And so it's a bright light bulb. It's a very bright light bulb. So if we break that down, the energy costs, the actual electrons flowing on the wires, it's right around 6 to 7 cents out of the 15. Cost to you, and that you can buy it in Prineville retail for like 6 or 5 cents. Because their energy costs, it's all hydropower based out of the Pacific Northwest. From the Bonneville Power Administration. Yeah. Their energy costs are probably 1 to 2 cents. Right. And then they don't have all the regulations that we have. They don't have regulations. They have some, but not as many as us to say your energy will be X percent renewable by X date. And if you buy natural gas, you have a California carbon allowance. It's essentially they call it a fee or a tax or whatever. You want to get lost in the semantics of it, but essentially, if you want to have emissions in California as part of your operation, you're going to have an allowance to do that, and that costs money. right? Those are permits issued by the state. And then if you need to buy one, you go to the auction and you buy it. The state gets the money. If you have an extra, you can sell it at the auction. You get the money, right? But it's that program specifically. If you go to the gas pump, you'll start to see some labels stuck right on the pump, and it'll say California Cap and Trade.
Right.
60 cents a gallon.
Yeah, I think we drive diesels. It's like $1.10 or $1.15 right now.
Right.
Tax
Yeah.
on top of the price.
Low carbon fuel standard.
Right.
Another program. So when you layer on 20 plus years of energy policy, renewables, zero carbon, low carbon, all these, that all gets to a state that has a desire. The social policy is to decarbonize the entire state, whether it's the transportation sector, the energy sector, manufacturing, cement. It doesn't matter what it is, right?
Sure.
But that all costs money. And then the other thing you have in California is labor costs, insurance costs, wildfire risk. I mean, this is all very, very expensive things to operate. And then just, in California, everything costs more here because there's so much demand.
Right.
There's 40 million people here versus you take Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Utah. I'm not sure if
there's even 40 million.
There's even 40 million there, right? So when you look at the demand, that causes a strain on the resources, on the transmission grid. That costs more, right? And then when you go to buy supplies, they know you're in California. So you want to order poles, or you want to order transformers, or fuses, switches, underground wire. You're competing with, say, PG&E, who wants to underground 10,000 miles.
Right.
So when I go buy underground cable to do my 150 miles that I'm replacing, I'm competing against that demand.
Yeah.
And the cable manufacturers know it, and they're not going to cut you a break.
Right.
This is business.
Yeah.
Right? So that's why it costs more.
Yeah. Oh, man. So last year also, I was fortunate enough to be on the integrated resource plan. So you guys are, like you talked about a minute ago, you're planning out 40 years. In a minute, we could talk about you're planning out 2.5 minutes. Every 2.5 minutes, you're always planning with the trading desk. But, going through that integrated resource plan, tell us a little bit about what that process is. I could try to explain it, but you're going to do a better job than I am, and, why that's important and how Reading is going to, meet the demands of the state of California.
Right. I mean, integrated resource plan, it's kind of a nerdy terminology for a long-term business plan.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, any business that sells a product or a commodity probably looks out 10, 20 years, 30 years. Maybe that's a little too far, but say 20 years. And says, how do we forecast how much of this commodity is going to be demanded?
Right.
We're a little different because let's say we're a monopoly essentially, right? Our sales, we're going to have the sales. We have to serve the city. So it's a little different.
Yeah.
You're not guessing really at what your market share is going to be. You know what it's going to be. So now you're trying to dial that in. So the integrated resource plan essentially is, what do we think we're going to have to serve in the next 20, 30 years of power at the city?
Right.
Both instantaneous peak and then the megawatts or the kilowatts per hour over a year. And then what are the rules to serve that? What has to be renewable? What has to be zero carbon? How does hydropower fit in? All the rules and the regulations. And then what do you have today? And then do you want to forecast more rules and regulations? Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. And of course, the state of California said, they want utilities to be net zero by 2045 or zero by 2045 in the portfolio, zero carbon. And that's really not defined yet. What does zero mean? Zero means something different to everybody. But to us, that's part of the integrated resource planning process. We asked our stakeholder group that you were part of and said, here's what it takes to get to actual zero carbon, how much solar you have to build, wind you have to build. And here's what that's going to cost.
It was pretty draconian. I mean, it was pretty hardcore.
It was dramatic,
Yeah.
right? That's the best word. And, and I think the stakeholder group said, okay, what about net zero where you can run the Reading power plant a little bit?
Yeah, and it was a diverse group of people in that room,
Right.
Which I thought was great.
Well, that was the point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't Nick's utility,
Right.
Right? I'm not the CEO here. This
Yeah.
is your utility,
Right.
So let's get the cross sector, let's get the stakeholders in the room and say, disadvantaged or affordable income folks, what do you think? Business group, chamber, what do you think?
Right.
Tribes, everybody who's involved.
Yeah.
And so the hardest part in California of doing long-term planning is you make a plan, and then there's a legislative session.
Yeah, the goal shift.
And then they write
the
200
goalpost
laws,
moves.
and now we're in trouble, right? So it changes.
Yeah, they write 200 laws an hour, basically.
200 laws an hour, right?
Yeah.
Or you have a plan, and then something changes in your portfolio, and now your plan's out the window. But you have to start somewhere. And you have to know. And that's
Yeah.
what the plan does.
Yeah, it's amazing. Are we ever going to get mini nuclear in Reading? Is Reading Electric Utility going to build like a mini nuclear, like the nickel? What is it? The salt nickel or nickel oxide? Or I was talking to Congressman Lamalfa about this a couple months ago. He said there was some nuclear group came to Congress and presented, and there was some newfangled, like really small salt nuclear power plant or something like that.
You know, there's a lot of ideas out there. The latest that I've heard as far as something, well, let me just answer, no, the answer is no.
Okay,
but
fair.
let's just explore for a second.
Yeah.
So state of California has a moratorium on building new nuclear until the federal government has a plan, long-term permanent plan
Yeah.
for nuclear waste.
Yeah.
And they haven't done that. They've worked on it, spent a lot of money on it, but they don't have that plan. But there is something called small modular nuclear reactors where they're about 60 megawatts apiece. They're fully self-contained, and you essentially run them until they run out, and then it's done. I think they can refuel them, but maybe you don't even do that. That would be something about the size that would work for us. Our power plant's about 187 megawatts, so theoretically you can put, say, 3 of those out there. They were working, the company called NewScale was working on that with Idaho National Labs, and they were working on developing it, and I think that partnership might have fallen apart a little bit with NewScale. But it's expensive, and it's complicated,
right.
and it involves the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory
Yeah.
Commission. And you know, there's a lot of history and drama with nuclear power.
Oh yeah,
From a narrative standpoint.
Right.
Factually speaking, if you look at the amount of energy nuclear's produced trouble-free, it's staggering.
Right.
It's almost like flying, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Where people have this huge fear of
Sure.
flying. And you know, it's like, well, I'm going to drive, it's safer. You should probably check the facts.
Yeah, right,
So, but I just think that is such a hurdle.
Yeah.
But maybe not in my lifetime.
Yeah. Well, thank you for entertaining me on it, though.
Absolutely.
I mean,
no, I'm not saying no,
not ever.
But I do think, let's call it the 30 plus year space, maybe 30 to 50 year space, they should probably start talking about in California, because it is the only way to produce that much zero carbon energy in such a tiny little footprint.
Yeah. Right. What's kind of the pie chart of where Reading Electric Utility gets its power now? And again, I see this a lot because I go to council meetings, and I'm kind of I love power. I think it's super interesting.
So let's just kind of break it up into 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. So about 1/3 of our power comes from hydropower. Now, I know a lot of people think,
everyone thinks it comes from Shasta Dam.
Yeah, it all comes from Shasta Dam,
Yeah,
which
right.
I mean, I totally get it.
Yeah.
You know, we live right next to it. It's a 600 megawatt
It's huge.
plus power plant. But we get 1/3 of it from the Central Valley Project, which is the series of dams and generators that
Shasta, Trinity, Whiskeytown,
Lucin, all that.
Yeah.
Right. Folsom, Nimbus, O'Neill, San Luis.
They're all part of the CVB
all
as well.
CVB.
Okay.
So we get about a little over 8% of whatever that produces in a year. So if it rains a lot, perfect. We're getting a lot of juice.
Yeah.
If it doesn't rain a lot, bad news, because we have to pay the federal government the same whether it rains a lot or doesn't rain much.
Gosh.
Because we're not paying them for energy. We're paying to maintain the generators. We're paying to maintain the facilities. That's what we're paying for. And to repay the United States Treasury for building the project.
And it's not to sidetrack too much, but it's not zero carbon energy. Large hydro is not zero carbon, right?
No, it's not renewable.
We're not renewable. Okay, sorry, thank you. Yeah.
So,
all right, so that's a chunk.
That's a chunk. But as we move forward, I don't really know if anybody's really going to hassle you on that. When you're looking to get to net zero by 2045, it's definitely counting.
Right.
It's definitely counting. I think where the policymakers were when they made that law, if it's not renewables, they don't want you to make more of it.
Right,
they don't want you to dam something else up, right?
Yeah, right.
For environmental reasons.
Yeah.
So the other 1/3 right now essentially comes from a wind project up out of Washington State called Bighorn Wind. We signed that contract in 2006. It runs through 2026 with a 5-year extension. We're working with the provider on that 5-year extension. It provides about 1/3. Then the other 1/3 comes from the Reading Power Plant, which is natural gas fired.
Yeah.
And when we talk about that, it's kind of mysterious for a lot of people. Is what do you mean it's natural gas fired? What are you guys doing out there? You're just like lighting a giant torch. I don't get it. I mean, just picture a jet engine.
Yeah.
That instead of it hanging off the wing of a plane, we mount it inside of a box, and we don't use the air thrust of it to propel it anywhere. We actually bolt it, to the ground really good because it's like 60,000 horsepower.
It's impressive.
And we run a shaft out the front of it, and that shaft turns an electric generator, right? And then that makes power. It goes through a gearbox, of course.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to spin the gearbox that fast, but it goes through a gearbox, and then that makes power. And then the exhaust comes out the back of the engine, and it goes through a series of boiler tubes where we stick water in it and it makes steam out the top, and we send the steam over to a steam turbine where you blast the steam on turbine blades.
Yeah.
It spins that.
So you're getting it 2 times.
2 times.
Yeah.
It's called combined cycle.
Okay.
And it raises the efficiency to somewhere in the mid 50% range for the electricity you get out versus the fuel you put in. So, and it's ultra clean. It runs through the same type of catalytic converters that's on our cars.
Right.
Actually, almost kind of like diesel technology, where we spray urea on it to take the NOx out of it. So, and it's always monitored by our air quality district. We call it continuous emissions monitoring. So even if there's a mistake, the air district knows it because it automatically sends them a report.
Right.
So there's no sneaky business.
Yeah.
It's like, but that plant is state of the art. It's got some of the best team in the business. And it's a amazing asset for a city this size to have.
And is there a couple times a year people can go see the power plant?
Yeah, there's been, of course, like with everything else, a lot more restrictions on security. But if you're really, really interested in a tour, go ahead and reach out.
It's really cool. It's very cool.
We'll probably have to skirt you away from certain areas, but you can definitely go check it out.
So Bighorn, that's about a third of your power right now, and you have about 7 years left if that 5-year extension is all ironed out.
So what are we doing?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
So we're working on a few things, actually. So we're part of the Northern California Power Agency. We call it a joint power, joint action agency with Roseville and Santa Clara, even Little Utilities, Gridley, Lodi, those folks. And we're all participating in a large scale renewable energy hunt, right? And we've kind of narrowed our focus. There's a project in Southern California that we have transmission rights to for solar that we're very interested in, probably moving towards a letter of intent on that. And the reason it's way down there and not up here is down there, the sun shines an extra hour on both ends in the morning and in the evening.
So that's going to increase the yield of that.
Yeah, so we call it the capacity factor.
I just can't believe, I was going to say, we're the sunniest city in California. Let's talk about solar here, but finish your thought there.
Okay. So, but down there, the solar insolation factor, the amount of energy that comes from the rays is much higher because you're closer to the equator.
Right.
So, don't get too technical here, but essentially that's it. Also, land is very cheap, and there's a ton of it because it's out in the desert.
Right.
So we're looking at a solar plus storage project, so large-scale energy storage, utility scale. So what the sun can come up, it can energize the panels, and the panels will start energizing and charging the large solar system, the storage system, which will probably be lithium-ion.
Yeah.
And then that keeps us, we don't want all this power at noon. We don't need it at noon.
Right.
When's it hot in Reading?
3, 4, 5.
3, 4, 5 until
8,
9, 10. So we want to shift that whole thing there, right? So we're looking at maybe 8 hours, at least 6 hours of energy storage. And so the other thing that allows us to do is allows our operators to control when we're going to get it and what we call schedule it or shape it to fit Reading's needs.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit more about solar. Councilmember Johnson right now has brought this up a little bit. Can we get a big solar project here? You have one at the airport. I think that's a 10 megawatt one, if I'm not mistaken, or smaller than that.
We looked at one. So the airport,
is there one at the airport?
The airport has a project. It's pretty small though. I think it's 100 kilowatts or something.
Way smaller.
Yeah,
okay.
And that's owned and operated by the airport, and that essentially that feeds their meter and back feeds a grid type thing. But we are looking at a local solar plus storage installation. So the resource planning team, these are the folks that do the long-term, let's call them the long-term buyers. They're the folks that go to the grocery store. The short-term trading team makes dinner. That's what I say.
That's a good way. That's good.
So the grocery shoppers are looking at putting together, we call it RFP, request for proposals, to put out to developers that says, look, there's these areas in Reading that we think are the best spot to build solar and storage. Your solar developers is what you do for a living. This is what you're good at. You go look at all these and give us the best proposal.
Probably city property?
Yeah, city property.
Yeah,
probably city property.
How big of a system are you thinking?
I would, we'd like to start with 10, maybe 15 megawatts.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm getting a little too excited here. Maybe my team would
go big or go home.
But if we're going to do it, let's do it, right?
Yeah.
And
solar plus battery.
Solar plus storage. Yeah, we got to have the storage.
Right.
There's 20 megawatts, maybe a little bit more, of solar in Reading right now on people's rooftops.
Wow.
That has no storage associated with it. So what a lot of folks don't know is the energy trading team is constantly having to manage that shape. So if a cloud comes over Reading,
Gosh.
what it appears to them
You
is,
got to fire up the turbines.
yeah, 20 megawatts of load just appeared.
Yeah, right.
And then the cloud goes away and it disappears.
Right.
So we
Because you have to balance it all
and
the time,
and we-
24/7.
Yeah, we have ways to manage that through market mechanisms, but it's interesting.
Could you just do a big battery system for the city of Reading right now to
Right.
capture all that rooftop storage?
You could.
Or all that, rooftop solar?
You could, yeah.
Does
But
it
a
make
lot
sense?
of it, but a lot of it is also it's absorbed at the homes and businesses,
Right.
At the point, right?
Right.
So picture Walmart.
Yeah.
Right. Walmart's got a large solar system right on the roof. 99% of the time, with all the refrigeration and air conditioning, that it's produced and used on site.
Oh, interesting.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
So, but yeah, we are looking at large scale storage.
Yeah.
For the future.
Standalone storage potentially as
Standalone
well.
storage.
You're
Just
going to
picture
that?
big shipping containers full
Right.
of lithium ion.
Right.
Right. And I know what everybody's thinking. Those are going to catch on fire. It's
Yeah.
going to burn everything underground. There's a few types of lithium ion chemistry. The utility scale storage is moving towards one that's less volatile, but it's also not a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Like Tesla type in our iPhones and all this
Right.
stuff. That is kind of Ferrari level lithium ion because we want it to charge and discharge and be right there however we need it. Energy utility storage doesn't have to be so Ferrari like.
Right.
We can chill out a little bit,
Yeah.
de-risk it. So, but yeah.
So you got solar, IRP, regulations. What is the biggest challenge for REU right now?
The biggest challenge is getting it's not what a lot of people think of, is our system's kind of old,
Yeah.
right? So we are hot and heavy in the middle of it, pulling a lot of underground cable out that's old. And so, we have inspectors and we know what it is and where it is. Some of this stuff is 30 years old. Some of it's older than 30 years. Now it lasts that long, right? It really does because it's in conduit, PVC pipe underground, it's jacketed. But we'd rather replace it on our terms versus when it decides to die.
Yeah.
Right. And now we have outages.
Preventative maintenance.
And there's no rhyme or reason to it. A lot of people think, oh, it's gonna fail when it's hot. No, it could fail on. Usually it's Christmas Day or
Yeah.
Thanksgiving,
Yeah,
or
perfect
Super Bowl,
timing.
right?
Yeah.
Something horrible. But it's time. We're going through. We have a target. We had a target of about 13 miles a year of pulling it out from underground, replacing it with new stuff. And our crews are so fantastic. We're probably on pace for 25 miles a year.
Wow.
Which it's hard, right?
Yeah.
You have to open vaults on either end. You go into the vaults, or they can be full of water, full of dirt. They can be caving in. So now you got to replace the vaults. Then you got to pull the cable out. Sometimes it gets stuck.
Oh, gosh.
It doesn't want to come out.
Yeah.
So now you got to cut the road, dig it up, find the conduit. I mean, they don't call it the underworld for nothing.
Right.
But once you get it done, theoretically, seal the deal, shut the lids, and inspect it,
Right.
on its normal cycle. But it should give you 30 years of
Yeah.
service. But and the reason we need to do that is it takes us a while to get this stuff fixed. But our customers can buy electric cars and put a charger in at their house in a weekend.
Right.
Yeah, maybe not a weekend, but
Yeah,
in,
sure,
a, few, in a few weeks.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I've got 2 more air conditioners worth of load installed at your house.
Right.
And so, we can't go as fast as the electric car community can.
Yeah.
I think I'm actually taking a deep breath a little bit because I think the EV sales are slowing. I think the early adopters have adopted and bought them. I think you're moving into the middle part of that adoption curve.
Yeah.
Where you've got folks that are more like, okay, is this going to save me money or not?
Yeah.
Right. It isn't I'm tech motivated, I'm financially motivated.
Right.
So, I think all the major manufacturers are chilling out a little bit. They're pulling back on building EVs. But in California, not nationwide, but in California, they're going to push EVs.
Oh, for sure. They are.
They are.
I mean, they're mandating it.
They didn't.
They're mandating
They didn't
it.
change the mandate.
Right.
They didn't say in 2035 you don't have to get an all electric car if you buy a new one. That's still the mandate, right?
Yeah.
So, and what we also have concerns is Reading, from a medium and heavy duty fleet perspective, is the hubbub. Caltrans, Forest Service, BLM,
Logging trucks.
Sure. School buses. Think of all the school districts,
Yeah.
right? So trucking companies, it's all here. And then we go out, everybody goes out and serves all the surrounding counties.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of load. That's a lot of charging. And that started now. 2027, if you buy a new vehicle, it has to be zero emission. So there could,
2027 has a public utility.
as an owner of 50 or more in a fleet.
Yeah. So
It's a state law.
Yeah. Right.
It isn't just utilities.
But not private citizens. 2027.
Well, if you're a private citizen that owns a company that has a medium heavy-duty fleet,
sure. More than 50.
Yeah.
Anyone with more than 50.
Yeah. So that's where we're
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years.
Oh, man.
So that's where we're motivated to, let's get the infrastructure upgraded. Because a lot of people have questions like, can the grid even handle this?
Sure.
Why? I don't think the grid can handle this. I would tell you, yes, the grid can handle what's out there today. We'll be able to handle it tomorrow. But if we snap our fingers overnight and every vehicle's electric, it's going to get a little tricky. But we're not going to snap our fingers. Not every car is going to turn electric. There's 39 million vehicles in California. 1.6 million are sold each year. Do the math. It's gonna be a while.
Right. So you thinking how long until the demand for Reading Electric Utility kind of doubles with projections of EVs alone, not manufacturing and all this other stuff?
We brought a consultant in, Frontier Energy, and they specialize in this space.
Yeah.
They pull DMV data, customer behavior. They take in all the regs from the state, both for medium, heavy duty and light duty. And they said basically when it's mandated.
Yeah.
So, we're really not going to start to see that heavy loading till late 2030s.
Yeah.
Maybe early 2040s. But then again, this is all guessing and forecasting.
Right.
I mean, if fleet operators figure out a way that these EVs are cheaper, they don't really care what the propulsion system is. They're trying to deliver goods and freight at the lowest cost possible to drive a profit. And I'm going to give, I actually was on KQMS the other day, and this is a little risque, but when I was talking, I said, let's talk about an electric car for us, the average Joes. Take away the politics, strip that out. I'm not trying to save the world. It's not climate change. We're going car shopping, and we have fuel choices. We have gasoline, most common. We got diesel. We got electric. Mm-hmm. Everything's got 4 tires. Everything's got a steering wheel, 4 doors. The windows go up and down, right? This is what it does. In Reading, because our rates are so low, it's about $1 a gallon equivalent if you drive an electric car.
Wow.
So if we drive 1,000 miles a month on average, I'm just using some figures, and you have a car that gets about 25 to 27 miles per gallon based on current fuel rates, or about $200 a month, maybe a little less, maybe $180. If you're to charge your car at home, it's about $45 a month.
Yeah.
So you get about $150 a month in fuel savings for the household. You can go lease an EV right now for about $159 a month, depending, because a lot of the manufacturers are trying to sell these to move them off the lots. Right. So if you take away the politics part and you're just looking at your own wallet and go, man, and especially in Reading, depending on your income level, we offer an affordable income voucher, which means you go to the dealer, you get it at the dealership right off the top.
You don't have to submit a paperwork.
No paperwork. You're not putting
get it.
It's not complicated where it's like, well, I'm going to get a loan, but then I got to get this rebate from REU. How do I pay off my loan? None of that. We've worked with all the dealers in Reading. You get a voucher right off the top.
That's amazing.
So if you go to lease a vehicle and they want $3,000 down, and you're a family of 4 and you're under $89,000 a year, you get a $3,000 voucher at the spot. So now your down payment's done.
Yeah.
So now your lease is $159
your lease
a month.
doing signing, that payment's taken care of,
Done.
and then you might have a net cost of $9, or you might even you're going to save money with fuel costs and all that stuff.
I mean, insurance will probably be a little more, but I'm not trying to do pencil perfect here. But what I'm saying is, I think everybody should take a look at it for a second.
Yeah.
And set aside the partisan stuff of it, and just say, mathematically speaking, how many miles a day do I really drive?
Right.
If I'm worried about going out of town with it, do I have a different car I can take?
Yeah.
Right. So just some thoughts on that. But once people start to figure this out, especially in Reading, because it's $1 a gallon. Our rates are so low.
That's cheap.
It's a deal.
What are some other rebates that are happening right now with REU? Because some of the ones that you guys have had over the years for like LED retrofits and HVAC and windows are really amazing. What are some other rebates now that you want to share and talk about?
So rebate wise, we've actually just made a big shift in that space. So for years we rebated HVAC to move you up to a higher SEER level, much more efficient. We rebated getting you out of incandescents into LEDs because they use about 10% of what an incandescent does. We rebated windows and all these other things. Now what we've done is with the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of federal money that's being pushed to the state, and the state's going to start offering a lot of these rebates.
Direct from the state, not
Direct
through
from the
REU?
state, not through REU.
Yeah.
You go to the Energy Commission and put in for them. What we've done is shifted our focus on electrification for our disadvantaged and affordable income customers. So we partner with SHIP, the Self-Help Home Improvement Project. They are going out targeting apartments, homes, doesn't matter if you own it or you rent it, it does not matter, to come in and say, okay, you've got an old gas stove, you have an old air conditioning unit that was, say, natural gas furnace, and you got a gas water heater, and this stuff's all 35 years old. SHIP will come in and replace all of that at no cost to you.
Really?
With all electric appliances.
Wow.
And before we have a panic moment about the cooktop,
Yeah, right.
you're actually going to get an induction cooktop.
Oh, that's nice.
It's not the ones that you and I grew up with the
red glow
the resistant rings,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
This is, you're going to get an induction cooktop. You get a pot and pan set with it.
Wow.
Right. I mean, we're going to set you
Income
up.
qualified
Income
for all
qualified.
this stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
through SHIP.
That's
They're a
amazing.
nonprofit. We kind of feel like those are the folks that really need some help here.
Sure.
And for folks that can afford to go to Lowe's and get a water heater, while it's probably very unpleasant, there's a lot of folks that can't afford that, or they're in a rental and these appliances are really old, and their rents have probably gone up,
Right.
and fuel costs have gone up at the pump. It costs a lot of money to buy shoes for the kids at school. You go to the grocery store, it's up. So we have thousands of customers that need this.
Right.
They need some help. So I'm really excited about that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you think what do you think is going to be the majority of the power mix for REU in 50 years? Maybe we should go at 100, but that might be a little too sci-fi.
I think in 50 years, it's going to be a mix of hydropower.
Yep.
We signed another 30-year contract with the federal government. So definitely through 2055, we're going to be taking hydropower. We're not going to miss that deal. I think you're going to have solar with storage. I think you're going to have probably offshore wind. There's a big push to
Will some of that
offshore.
come to REU from what's happening on the coast right now?
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah, we're not going to miss that opportunity.
Yeah.
So, but that is, I read this in an article the other day that said that they need to start training kids that are in 6th grade because they're going to be the ones that are building those projects.
Yeah, seriously.
And once they put it in that context, okay, this is a ways out.
Well, it's going to be before we know it.
Right, it will be. So
I have a 5th grader.
Yeah.
And so I should get him trained on that.
Yeah, wind turbine technician.
Yeah.
It's going to pay really well.
Yeah.
Right. Just don't be afraid of heights.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see solar. I think you're going to see wind. Definitely hydropower. Maybe some geothermal mixed in there. I think we need to see some biomass come back.
Yes.
I think we really.
favorite.
I think we need to. The state
Right.
needs to be okay with that.
Yeah,
Right?
but it's not biomass is never going to be cost competitive for REU. It might work for PG&E with these long-term purchasing power agreements of 19.5 cents a kilowatt hour. But how do you mix it in?
Right now, it just doesn't compete.
Right.
It's just really expensive. However, biomass provides firm power all the time.
Yeah, right.
So in a future world where you're not allowed to run gas turbines, right? You're going to need that firm power all the time. And no part of this future is going to be cheap.
Yeah.
No part of building wind turbines in the ocean and building new transmission lines all over California, none of that is going to be cheap.
Right.
Building new solar panels, over millions of acres with large scales, that's expensive.
Right.
Right. The Central Valley Project was built in the 1930s and 40s. It'll be 100 years old in 20 years.
Yeah.
Those dams with all the moving parts inside of them, that's very expensive. And there's
Right.
been a lot of work by our federal partners securing money to start getting ahead of that curve. So just what we call the Trinity River Division,
Yeah.
there's 19 transformers have to get replaced. When I mean a transformer, I mean probably one the size of this room.
Right.
Because they're 50 years old.
Yeah.
So
Those are not cheap.
they're not cheap. And they take like 3 years to build.
Right.
So, and that's just that area, just that division, just transformers. So none of this future is going to be cheap. But I think we're going to get there. And I think we're going to get there with reliability. And I don't want everybody to think it's all going to just hit us in an inrush, punch us in the face. Our rates are going to triple.
Right.
It's not going. That's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It physically cannot happen. We can't get This industry can't build something that fast.
Yeah.
So,
Man,
yeah.
it's amazing. A little bit at a time. A little bit at a time.
A little bit at a time.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a reality check of shutting down gas-fired power plants too early. I think
kind of like Diablo Canyon right now.
Diablo Canyon.
Yeah,
I think, and it's okay. It's okay to have ambition hit techno reality.
Right.
Right. It just has to be recognized and messaged correctly.
Yeah.
And I think people get it. I think people are okay with it.
Yeah.
Right. So, but yeah, it's going to be a good mix.
That's interesting.
And to be fair,
you're already thinking 50 years out, realistically, for your contracts and everything that you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think of at the Reading Power Plant, what if one of the large turbines comes up for a major overhaul 10 years from now? Are you going to spend $15 million on that?
Right.
Or are you going to just retire it and then go build energy storage, right?
Yeah.
So those are all the things that we're constantly looking at. But for now, no, we're set.
Yeah.
The plant is fantastic. It's going to go through some major overhauls in the spring. And I think gas generation is going to be here for quite a while.
That's great.
Yeah.
What is your vision for Reading 10 years from now?
For the city?
Yeah. Not just internally, not the government, but the city itself.
Sure.
Where do you see Reading? Where do you want to see Reading 10 years?
I see Reading as a haven for families, for new families.
Yeah.
So, I married my high school sweetheart. We have 2 kids. I can't believe, I don't feel this old, but, my kids are, almost 16 and 18. But I remember, we raised our kids right here.
Yeah.
We had a perfect little house and a perfect little cul-de-sac with fantastic neighbors. And, my kids have gone to the local schools and the local high schools and the junior college. And I think this is going to be a haven for families. I think it's affordable. I think if you live down south in the Bay Area, LA, the idea you can come here and buy a home, actually be a homeowner.
Right.
And you can put your kids in kind of whatever school you think fits best for your family's needs. And then you can go paddleboarding in the summer, snowboarding in the winter. You can ride bikes on those fantastic trails. You can do local eateries. You can do franchise eateries. It's if I was raising a family again, this is the spot.
Yeah.
And I'm all over California all the
Right.
time. I've been everywhere with it. And I think that's going to be Reading. So I think you're going to see more of that. You're going to see more sports. You're going to see more events. And I think what I just hope is we have good growth. And everybody can afford to have a spot here.
Yeah.
And a chance at it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And they're going to have cheap, affordable, reliable
Absolutely.
power for years to come.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
This is pretty simple. I was at National Night Out with some folks, and I get to go along with police and fire. They drag me along. I'm the REU guy, which is great. And I talked to some of the folks in the neighborhoods. I said, "What do you need from me? What do you need from me?" And it was so succinct. And the lady says, "Just don't screw this up." There you go. Nice. I said, "Hey, we can do that.
That's awesome.
We can do it."
That's awesome. Anything else that you're like, man, I really want to make sure that.
What I would ask is when we're working on programs and projects and we're looking for participation, come participate.
Yeah.
Be part of it. If you have thoughts, share them. Give us a call. Send us an email. Come by the office.
You guys have a lot of workshops.
We do.
For a lot of things. Everything you're doing, you have a lot of opportunities for public participation.
That's the point of this, right?
Yeah.
It's
our utility.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's awesome.
The City Builders podcast is brought to you by Obsidian IT. Obsidian IT is a Reading-based, employee-owned technology company providing simple, scalable, outsourced IT for your business. Discover how Obsidian cares about IT and give them a call at 530-242-6000 or obsidianit.com. Obsidian keeps us running at the chamber, and we could not do business without them.